Have you ever wondered how your great-grandmother kept food fresh without refrigeration? Ancient civilization stored meat in the heat and vegetables in the winter long before electricity. Our ancestors didn't just survive, they created conservation methods that were more ingenious than modern ones. With salt and thyme, raw meat was transformed into delicacies costing tens of dollars per kilogram. Fermentation made cabbage richer in vitamins than fresh vegetables. The smoke from the fire preserved the fish for the explorers' year-long voyages. Underground cellars kept vegetables crisp throughout the harsh winter. Indian jerky fueled expeditions across entire continents. Honey preserved food for thousands of years without a single sign of spoilage. Winter ice kept food cool even in the hottest summer. Imagine raw meat that can be stored without refrigeration for more than 2 years, and at the same time becomes an exquisite delicacy. This is not science fiction. It is the magic of salt and thyme that turns ordinary pork into prosciutto, costing from $50 per kilogram. Italian families in Parma have been hanging whole pork legs in cellars since the 14th century, covering them only with salt. Salt draws out moisture, concentrates flavors, and creates a protective crust of beneficial mold. 18 months later, a completely new product is obtained, not just preserved meat, but a gastronomic miracle. Spanish Iberico jam goes through the same ancient transformation process. Pork butts are buried in sea salt for months, then hung in cool caves. Salt dehydrates the meat, creating an environment where harmful bacteria cannot survive, and beneficial mold forms a protective coating. You can start with something simple. Pickle egg yolks or lard. Once you master the basics, you'll create gourmet ingredients that restaurants pay hundreds of dollars for. There is a method of preservation that not only prevents spoilage, but makes food healthier every day it is stored. Fermentation turns ordinary vegetables into probiotic powerhouses that improve with age. Sauerkraut from World War I is still edible in museum exhibits. Korean families pass kimchi recipes down through generations, creating self-perpetuating ecosystems in simple clay pots. Beneficial lactobacilli bacteria produce lactic acid, which kills pathogens and creates an acidic environment for long-term storage. Fermented foods become more nutritious over time. Cabbage turns into sauerkraut, which is richer in vitamin C than fresh cabbage. Regular cucumbers are transformed into probiotic pickles filled with beneficial gut bacteria. The fermentation process breaks down compounds, making nutrients more available for absorption. Traditional cultures understood this, creating fermented versions of everything from fish sauce to cheese. While we buy expensive probiotic supplements, ancient methods turned waste into superfoods. Forget everything you know about smoking for flavor. True smoking creates natural chemical compounds so powerful that they completely stop the growth of bacteria. Cold smoking at temperatures below 32 degrees Celsius turns the fish into protein, which explorers carried on year-long expeditions. The Indian tribes of the northwest coast created salmon jerky through cold smoking, which was stored for entire winters without other preservation methods. Smoke doesn't just add flavor. Burning hardwood produces formaldehyde, phenols, and other compounds that penetrate deep into the food. It is a natural food chemistry laboratory that produces preservatives that pharmaceutical companies are trying to synthesize artificially. Hot smoking cooks and preserves at the same time, but cold smoking works the magic of pure preservation. Scottish salmon, German speck, and countless traditional delicacies exist because the smoke alone makes fresh food last for months. You don't just cook, you control food chemistry that has been perfected over thousands of years. Hidden underground is the most efficient refrigeration system in the world. It costs nothing to operate, maintains the ideal temperature all year round, and stores food for 8 months without technology. Root cellars use the natural insulation of the earth to maintain temperatures between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius, regardless of the weather outside. Dig a hole 2.5 meters deep and you will create stable conditions that will keep the potatoes fresh until the next harvest. Apples remain crisp all winter. Carrots remain sweet for 6 months. The genius lies in the physics. The temperature of the earth below the frost line remains constant. With proper ventilation, you have created moisture control that prevents both dehydration and rot. Pioneer families lived through the harsh winters solely from root cellar supplies. Modern settlers are rediscovering this ancient technology, building cellars to store hundreds of kilograms of food. Your ancestors never worried about freezer failures because they didn't need freezers. Long before astronauts ate freeze-dried ice cream, the American Indians created light, highly concentrated foods that lasted for years, using only the sun and wind. Dehydration is not just about removing water, it is about turning life into a portable form of energy. Pemmican, the original energy bar, combined dried meat, fat, and berries into compact blocks that fueled intercontinental travel. The Lewis and Clark expedition relied on pemmican to survive for months when fresh food was unavailable. 1 kilogram of pemmican replaced several kilograms of fresh produce. The principle is elegant. Bacteria need moisture to survive. Remove the water and the food becomes stable indefinitely. Sun-dried tomatoes, beef jerky, and fruit skins are not just snacks. They are examples of preserves that concentrate flavors. Solar dehydration has worked perfectly so far. Simple shelving in sunny locations preserves entire crops without electricity, just as traditional jerky makers did in South America. Here's a preserving secret that turns kitchen waste fat into an oxygen-free storage system that keeps meat tender and flavorful for more than a year. French confit isn't just cooking, it's edible engineering using simple physics. Duck confit works through the elementary laws of nature. Meat slowly cooked in its own fat, then completely immersed in it, creates an anaerobic environment where spoilage bacteria cannot survive. The fat forms a perfect seal, imbuing the product with flavors that improve over time. This technique preserved meat before the advent of refrigeration. French peasants cooked whole ducks, geese, or pork in fat, then stored them in cool cellars for months. The fat was not wasted. It became a medium for cooking vegetables and bread, while the meat remained perfectly preserved underneath. Modern restaurants charge premium prices for confit, which was originally a poverty cuisine designed to make food survive hard times. Acetic acid creates more than just a sour taste. It creates an environment so hostile to bacteria that food sits safely on shelves for years, developing complex flavors that improve with age. Traditional pickling turns vegetables into stable products that last indefinitely. Pickled eggs, fish, even meat are preserved in acidic solutions that prevent any spoilage while creating flavors that would be impossible when fresh. The chemistry is simple. Vinegar lowers acidity below levels where harmful bacteria can survive. The art is in balancing acids, salts, and spices to create environments where food survives and improves. Traditional pickling masters aged their creations for years, developing a flavor complexity unattainable by modern quick marinades. Korean families preserve everything from garlic to seafood in vinegar solutions. European traditions include pickled herring feeding sailors on month-long voyages. You're not just preserving food, you're transforming it into something that improves over time, never requiring refrigeration. Honey is the only food that never spoils, and it can impart the same immortality to other foods. Archaeologists have found 3,000-year-old honey that remains perfectly edible, revealing preservative powers that modern science has difficulty replicating. Honey's antimicrobial properties come from its low water content, acid balance, and natural production of hydrogen peroxide. These factors create an environment where bacteria simply cannot exist. The ancient Egyptians preserved meat in honey for months, creating concentrated food for desert travel. Honey preservation is not just a historical curiosity. Fruit preserved in honey maintains a fresh taste and texture for years. Traditional preparations include honey ham and fruits, which become concentrated delicacies. Modern conservators are rediscovering honey preservation for good reasons. It requires no equipment, no special conditions, and creates products that improve over time. You are using the same preservation method that kept the funerary food of the pharaohs fresh for millennia. Wood ash is not a waste product, but an alkaline preservation medium that transforms eggs into delicacies and vegetables into stable products through a chemistry reminiscent of ancient alchemy. Centuries-old eggs, preserved in an alkaline clay made from wood ash, lime, and salt, transform ordinary eggs into complex, flavorful delicacies of Chinese cuisine. The alkaline environment prevents spoilage by breaking down proteins into entirely new textures and flavors. Traditional Scandinavian lutefisk uses lye from wood ash to preserve fish through the winter months. The American Indians used ash water to preserve corn, creating hominy that lasted for years. High levels of acidity create conditions where harmful bacteria cannot survive, while beneficial chemical changes enhance nutrition. Ash preservation works through simple chemistry. Wood ash produces potassium hydroxide when mixed with water. You don't just store food. You use chemistry that turns waste ash into a preservative medium, creating products that don't exist in nature. Before electrical refrigeration, people captured the natural cooling of winter and stored it through the heat of summer, using insulation techniques so effective that the ice survived all year in the hottest climates. Commercial ice houses cut winter ice from frozen lakes and rivers, storing it in insulated buildings with sawdust, straw, and careful air circulation. Properly stored ice survived entire summers, providing cooling in outdoor temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius. Physics seems impossible, but traditional ice storage has achieved 90% retention through the summer. Thick walls, multiple layers of insulation, and controlled drainage created conditions where winter ice provided year-round cooling. Wealthy families built personal ice houses that provided fresh food and cold drinks during the hot months. Traditional techniques included underground ice caves in northern climates and above-ground ice houses in temperate regions. Community ice cutting was an annual tradition that provided months of cooling using only natural winter freezing and clever insulation. From salted meats to never-spoilable honey, these ancient methods prove our ancestors were able to cheat time without electricity or preservatives. While modern life depends on freezers and expiration dates, traditional techniques offered security that lasted for years. In many cases, they not only preserved food, but made it better, more flavorful, nutritious, and resistant to spoilage. Chinese dynasties developed alkaline egg preservation in the 14th century. Korean fermentation masters created kimchi that has been around for centuries. French peasants turned fat preservation into a gastronomic art. Indian tribes perfected smoking salmon for a year's supply of food. Egyptian priests used honey preservation for the afterlife of the pharaohs. Scandinavian fishermen relied on salt cod for sea expeditions lasting months. These methods were not just about survival. They were the basis of trade, exploration, and cultural identity. Each technique tells a story of human ingenuity turning limitations into advantages. Today, these ancient techniques remain relevant for gourmet cuisine, off-grid living, and sustainable preservation without modern technology. Home fermenters are rediscovering the art of creating probiotic products in simple jars on their kitchen counters. Modern homesteaders are building root cellars to store hundreds of kilograms of crops without electricity. Confit artisans transform duck legs into restaurant delicacies at a fraction of the cost of store-bought ones. Honey preservation is making a comeback among those looking for natural alternatives to industrial preservatives. Smoking at home creates restaurant-quality salmon from simple fish. Salt curing transforms ordinary egg yolks into gourmet ingredients, costing tens of dollars per kilogram in specialty stores. These techniques offer independence from the industrial food system. In an era of power outages and the desire for self-sufficiency, ancient wisdom becomes a modern necessity. Each method can be learned in a weekend and applied immediately. These techniques don't just preserve food. They improve flavor, nutrition, and durability in ways that fresh food can't achieve on its own. Raw meat becomes concentrated in umami through salt curing. Regular kale is transformed into a probiotic superfood through fermentation. Smoking creates a complexity of flavor not possible with other cooking methods. Honey preservation concentrates fruit flavors, enhancing their natural sweetness. Vinegar pickling develops acidity, which brings out the hidden flavor notes of vegetables. The contrasts are striking: raw versus canned, fresh versus aged, simple versus complex. Thyme becomes an ingredient that adds depth that no amount of immediate processing can create. Nutrients are concentrated, flavors are enhanced, textures are developed. Conservation is not a compromise with spoilage, it is an intentional improvement through controlled transformation. Our ancestors understood that patience creates perfection, time adds value, and proper processing transforms simple ingredients into culinary treasures. Which of these methods surprised you the most? Have you tried any of these, or are there other techniques we should look at next time? If this has inspired you to look at food storage in a whole new way, please like, subscribe, and share with others who would like to learn old techniques in a new light. Try interactive experiments that can be completed in a weekend. Salt the egg yolks in coarse salt. In a week, you will get a gourmet ingredient. Ferment your cabbage in a jar of salt, and within a month, you'll have a homemade probiotic powerhouse. Build a simple root cellar in the garden, or try cold smoking fish in a homemade smokehouse. Preserve fruit in honey, or create vinegar marinades that take months to improve. Each method opens up new insights into how food can be transformed and improved. Share the results on social networks. Which way will surprise your friends the most? Ancient wisdom awaits modern application, and each experiment brings us closer to understanding the true power of time and patience in cooking.